The black sedan idled outside the downtown office tower, rain streaking steadily down its windows while Daniel Reyes waited behind the wheel, watching the revolving doors for his passenger. He had been driving for the executive car service for almost a year now, ever since taking the job to have flexible hours around his daughter Lily's school schedule. Vivian Hale stepped out precisely on time, as she always did, her heels clicking sharply against the wet pavement as she climbed into the back seat, barely glancing at Daniel before burying herself in her phone. "The airport," she said curtly. "And take the faster route this time. Last week's drive felt unnecessarily slow." "Of course, ma'am," Daniel replied evenly, pulling smoothly into traffic. Vivian glanced up briefly, studying him with faint irritation. "You're new, aren't you? I don't remember seeing you before last month." "About 6 weeks now," Daniel said. "Well," she said, returning her attention to her phone, "try to keep up. I don't have patience for drivers who don't know the city well enough." Daniel said nothing, accustomed by now to her clipped tone and the quiet condescension that colored most of her comments during their brief drives together. He had learned early on that Vivian Hale valued efficiency above almost everything else, rarely offering pleasantries, rarely acknowledging him as anything more than a means of transportation. That evening, however, as they merged onto the highway leading toward the airport, Vivian's phone rang sharply. She answered immediately, her earlier irritation shifting instantly into alarm. "What do you mean the car went off the road?" she said, her voice suddenly tight with fear. "Is everyone all right? Where exactly?" Daniel glanced at her briefly through the rearview mirror, sensing the shift in her demeanor immediately. "That was my sister," Vivian said, lowering the phone slowly, her hands trembling. "My parents were driving back from a family visit. Their car slid off the road near Miller's Creek Bridge, during this rain. She says they're trapped, the car's partially submerged, and emergency services are still 10 minutes out." Daniel didn't hesitate. "I know that area," he said immediately, already changing lanes. "There's a service road that cuts through faster than the main route. We can get there before the ambulance does." Vivian stared at him, startled by his sudden certainty. "You're sure?" "I used to drive medevac routes during my service," Daniel said simply, flooring the accelerator carefully despite the slick roads. "I know these back roads better than most." The sedan sped through the rain-soaked streets, Daniel navigating skillfully through unfamiliar turns, weaving past slower traffic with practiced precision. Vivian gripped the door handle tightly, her earlier composure completely replaced by raw, visible fear. "They're getting older," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I keep telling them to slow down when they drive in weather like this. They never listen." "We'll get there," Daniel said firmly, his voice steady despite the tension in the car. Within minutes, they reached the service road leading toward Miller's Creek, the headlights illuminating a scene of chaos ahead, a car partially submerged in the swollen creek, water rising steadily around its tires, hazard lights blinking weakly through the downpour. Daniel pulled over immediately, grabbing a flashlight and emergency kit from the trunk before running toward the water's edge. "Stay back from the edge," he called to Vivian, who had followed closely behind him, panic evident in every movement. "The current's stronger than it looks." Inside the car, an elderly couple sat trapped, water steadily rising toward the door panels. Daniel waded carefully into the frigid water, testing his footing before reaching the driver's side door. "Sir, ma'am, I need you to stay calm," Daniel said firmly, forcing the door open against the pressure of the rushing water. "I'm going to get you both out safely." He guided the woman out first, supporting her carefully through the current toward the shore, where Vivian waited anxiously, wrapping a blanket from the trunk around her mother's shoulders. "Mom, are you hurt?" Vivian asked, her voice breaking with emotion. "Just shaken," her mother said, teeth chattering slightly. "Your father's still in there." Daniel waded back quickly, helping the elderly man carefully through the rising water, steadying him against the current until they both reached solid ground safely, just as the distant wail of sirens finally became audible through the rain. Paramedics arrived minutes later, quickly assessing both parents, confirming they were shaken but otherwise unharmed, thanks largely to the swift rescue Daniel had performed before emergency services could reach the remote location. Later, once everything had settled and her parents had been safely transported for observation, Vivian found Daniel sitting quietly on the open trunk of the sedan, wrapped in a spare blanket, still catching his breath from the cold water. "I don't know how to properly thank you," she said softly, her earlier sharpness completely gone, replaced now by quiet, genuine gratitude. "You didn't hesitate, not even for a second." "There wasn't time to hesitate," Daniel said simply. Vivian studied him carefully, something shifting behind her eyes. Earlier today, I was rude to you. Impatient, dismissive, and yet, the moment my family needed help, you didn't think twice. That's not about you, Daniel said honestly. It's about doing what needed to be done. Vivian sat down slowly beside him, the rain finally beginning to ease into a gentle drizzle. I judge people quickly, she admitted. It's a habit from years of running board meetings, making fast decisions, expecting the same efficiency from everyone around me. I don't often stop to consider who's actually sitting in front of me. Most people don't, Daniel said quietly. I'd like to change that, Vivian said. Starting with actually knowing the people who work for me. Daniel offered a small, tired smile. I appreciate that. As the ambulance finally pulled away toward the hospital, Vivian turned back to him one last time. Whatever you need, Daniel, consider it done. A promotion, a raise, whatever would help you and your daughter. Just steady, respectful work, Daniel said simply. That's really all I've ever needed. That evening, arriving home far later than expected, Daniel found Lily waiting up for him, curled on the couch despite the late hour. You're really late, Daddy, she said sleepily. Daniel knelt down, hugging her gently. I had to help some people get home safely tonight, he said softly. Lily studied him for a moment. Is that why your shirt's wet? Daniel laughed quietly, brushing damp hair from his forehead. Yeah, sweetheart, he said. Sometimes doing the right thing gets you a little wet. As he carried her carefully to bed, Daniel felt the quiet satisfaction of a difficult night ending well, another reminder that kindness, patience, and quick action could change everything, even for someone who had once dismissed him as nothing more than a driver.